My name is Akil, host of the Big 3 Me podcast, powered by G Media. And on today's episode, Sean James, former NFL player, a Midwestern guy, and a social advocate, and a guy who probably knows how to make money. But hey, stay with us here on the Big 3 Me podcast, powered by G Media. As always, let's get to it. Welcome back to the Big 3 and Me. As always, I'm your host, Akil Patterson, and I'm here with my good friend. You know what? He's probably a legend that you may not even know about. This man has helped hundreds of thousands of people, and he does it really quietly. My friend, my colleague, Mr. Sean James. How you doing, Sean?
Good, man. Akil, I've been waiting for this day that we could actually do something and talk. We've had so many discussions offline, per se.
Yeah.
And I've always found you kind of fascinating, not only being a former athlete, but just the way that you think on both sides, right? And I think that is the big three. The culture side, we always had a lot to talk about. The financial side, we've always had a lot to talk about. And then obviously the competition is just what's in us. You know, we were both athletes, so it's always a good time to talk to you and learn. So I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. So I think, we need to start at the beginning because, our relationship started inadvertently through Brendan Amadazio when he decides to become this LGBT advocate. And a lot of people give credit for like all these large organizations, but when really it was just kind of you and him having a conversation to start with. And talk about that.
Well, it was interesting. I always say education creates opportunity. And what that really means is when you're around people that think, there's always going to be a conversation. And I think what happens with a lot of people is that we put these parameters of how we can think and how we should think versus having a conversation. And I was always taught the more that you know on the other, what the other side's doing, the better you have an argument or you can learn. And, what's interesting is me and Brendan met at business school. We were both going for our MBA. And of course, I have 10 years on Brendan. And I remember the first day of just like seeing him, I was like, I saw something in him that I saw in myself. And that was curiosity. He was curious about everything. And I kind of just watched him from afar. I didn't really talk to him that much. And then the next thing you know, within a 2-year period of getting our MBA, we became best friends. And honestly, I saw a lot of the things that I had feared of doing, but they were always in me. And that's when the gay pride movement came and obviously his voice of, marriage equality as a Baltimore Raven. And it just kind of went into a whole nother thing. And he got an award. He invited me to the show. And at that moment, I'm going to be honest. I mean, it's interesting because I saw you at so many events. I was like, I'm not doing enough. And I think as a straight African-American man, there was such a stigma on being friends or having close friends that were gay. And the next thing you know, I'm counting on my fingers and all my friends were fucking gay and I wasn't.
Well, it definitely makes date night easier for you. You're like, hey guys, let's go out. I got this.
So, from that, it was just, my curiosity and seeing the things that he was doing. And it led for me to get into, I had so many friends in politics and I would see you at events and we would just run into each other. And the more I got to know you, the more that I saw how much you had done for not only being an athlete, but for athletes and for specifically Black athletes, because I think we're kind of in between the gap of the civil rights movement and the modern athlete, right? A lot of those cats don't know the shit that you had to go through, the shit I had to go through, and the shit that my mom and dad had to go through for us to be here, for us to even be on this podcast, right? Like, there's certain things that we kind of take for granted. And for those people out there listening, culture is a big part of it. because we rely on our culture so much that sometimes it doesn't allow us to think any different. And we got to change that through conversation, because cultures evolve as well.
You know, it's funny that you said, you know, what you went through and what your family went through. You're a product of a mixed race family, like just in general. And so, but it wasn't just in general, you were living in New York City. Yeah. You were in a mixed race family in the middle of Kansas, right? Like we're even the biggest city is still a small town on some East Coast cities.
And I think, you know, and you could identify to this too, just being a college athlete. When you go to school and you're away from your family and your high school and your neighborhood for the first time, even though you might have did some stuff in high school, went to tournaments, you know, as athletes, we know a little bit more than kids that don't travel, but it's still a culture. When you go to college for the first time and it's 2 days or 3 days, and you see kids from South Florida, you see kids from Philly, you see kids, I remember feeling like these dudes are looking at me like I'm some white dude, conservative Republican white kid from middle America. And honestly, I had to figure it out. I had to figure out the nuance of the differences in Black culture. But even in that, Atlanta's not Miami. Miami's not New York. And a Philly dude is not a Jersey dude. It's all different. DC is not, and we know this just because we're older, we've seen different, a Detroit dude is not a New York dude. So those cultures, even on the football field, even though there's a commonality of our skin color and how we were raised, we're all different. And I was raised a little bit different because I felt like I had something that a lot of the kids that went to urban schools didn't have. I knew how to listen and understand white people in a way that they didn't, because that's all I knew. Yeah. Right. And I think the diversity of me being in a small town in middle America and growing up around white people, it helped me. It did not hurt me, because the difference is that when you live in New York or you live in an urban community, and that's all you see, you're at a disadvantage on how to move around white folks. Mm-hmm. And I'm blessed for that, right? Because I knew once I got a job, I already knew how it worked, right? And we don't talk about that enough. I think people are uncomfortable with it. But understand this, people, if you're listening out there, when you're uncomfortable, that's where growth happens. And so when you cringe, you don't know how to handle those things, it's really probably a good conversation that you need to have. And a lot of times just sit back and listen.
I love that. Growth happens when you're uncomfortable. It's like, just sit back and get into it. Now, you had a career in the NFL, and then you transitioned into, I mean, ladies or gentlemen at home, whichever one, don't Google his name because you might find some risque photos from his modeling days. So he goes from the NFL to model to MBA school. You also, I know you were like, you helped bring Sean Avery in the fashion and stuff. Like, talk about leaving the field, because that's always hard, and then transitioning into a business world where you go from, you're literally putting your body on the line to now you're using your mind to make sure that your body and your mind are fed every day.
Right. Well, it's quite complex, but very simple for me. I was a kid that was always curious about the next move. And once I realized that my short stint in the NFL allowed me to maybe open doors. I wasn't a super famous player. I didn't do much there, but I was there. And leveraging that brand and having something to say once I got that opportunity was based around my curiosity of wanting to learn. And that's why I always say education creates opportunity. The more educated, I always say the more you know, the more you have. And the more you have, the more you got to know. And so I would always want to put myself in situations where I could learn. I wanted to put myself in situations where problems were being solved, because the ultimate business hack is solving problems. You got to be able to solve a problem. You have to be able to provide a service. And I knew that I needed to transition because I wasn't going to carry the football anymore. And so I needed to figure out what that was going to be. And what society doesn't realize, throw your policies away, throw your whatever demographic that you are away. At the end of the day, money is green. And I know people hate to hear that, but I always say follow the money. If you want to really know where the problem is at or how things are going to move, it's the GDP. It's what's happening in your country and where's the money going. So I became fascinated with finance. I became fascinated how do I make money work for itself without me having to be there? And I remember just kind of understanding the ideal of a dollar and how a dollar can grow without you working. And the three things that are the low-hanging fruit. It's the stock market. You don't have to have a degree. It's real estate and it's entrepreneurship. And so I really dove into all three of those. And I try to find people that were doing great things in the world and understand their thinking and their habits. And for me, the curiosity of anything that I've ever loved, if it was fashion, if it was an athlete transitioning to businessman, if it was anything that tied to something that I could touch or someone that I could talk to, like yourself, I would want to learn. I'd take people out to lunch. I'd ask them questions. It's always going to be driven by that curiosity. And so, high risk, high reward. I was a kid that was willing to get hit in the face because I knew I would be okay and keep moving forward. And that's really what it was about for me.
I love that. And I can attest, getting hit in the face to learn is a tough lesson, but if you know that you're going to survive it, you're okay with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing is what you said is like, it's college, it's business, it's being okay with that uncomfortableness because I'm going to be okay because I can survive this. It's not going to kill me. This is not going to hurt me. And that's kind of like a big reason why people always say to me, they're like, oh, you're just going to let this happen to you? I was like, no, I don't let it happen to me. I already knew it was going to happen to me, but I already prepared for it because I'm like an ant, right? During winter, while the grasshoppers are out there partying, I was like, nah, folks, homie, you're going to go stack up, and I'm going to say, for those folks at home that know about this crypto winter that came up, and the people got wrecked. They lost millions, if not billions of dollars. Some people were putting away 10% from on the side to be liquid for when the stock market does drop. Yeah. That's just because I'm an ant, man. I learned from sitting in rooms with guys like you, which I wouldn't have been privy to if not for the connection of sports and advocacy. It was a weird intersection, but it allowed me to get into rooms with folks like you who are smarter in business, who understand a little bit differently about the world and can educate me. Like, I know that I can educate you on certain things, but you educate me. And I think having those types of mentors is important. And so maybe talk a little bit about the types of mentoring that you do to this day to not only help, folks like myself, but even younger people and how we treat each other, developing your skill, because you turn this into a nonprofit as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, I keep going back to that word curiosity. When you think about the people that really change the world and really talk about the things they do and do it, it's all based off wanting to know. I'm someone that really takes a lot of pride in wanting to know, and that is education. The only way you're going to get that is to read and be around people. I always say you're as good as the people that you're around, and the people that you collect are like baseball cards. And sometimes you have to let some of those cards go, but the really ones that you value, hold on to because they're worth something. And for me, I line my life up like this. And I tell everyone I mentor, there's 5 cylinders of my life. It's my family, even though I didn't get to choose them, and there's some of them that I don't like, they're still my family. And that's why God created friends. It's myself, because if I'm not good, I can't be good to my family. and then it's work. It's important for me to go out and work and make money, because I realize that me sitting around feeling sorry for myself and talking about problems is not working, right? I hear a lot of people talk. You go on social media and people are talking about this and they're reposting stuff. And I'm like, okay, can someone put a post up that has a solution? Because we've seen that post 8,000 times. And then it's community, it's who's in my circle. You're in my circle, right? And there's certain things, when you think about your community, it's people that call you back. It's people that get back to you. It's people that are never too busy for you. And that community could be abroad. It could like you live in DC, you live in Maryland, I live in New York. You come here, you call me, right? We try to connect. It's important that you value those relationships, because ultimately relationships are going to get you everything that you want or you don't know and someone else has. I'm big on asking why people think the way that they think. I set up a program for NBA players because I saw that NBA players traveled more than football players. When you think of the NFL or even college football player, we play one time a week and we travel once a week.
For NBA, 17 weeks, and you're not always away.
Not always away. So everything's there's a lot of infrastructure there. The NBA doesn't have that much infrastructure. So be it a lot of my clients are high net worth athletes and they're young, I wanted to make sure that I created something for them that tied to mentorship. And this is what we don't really realize, is that mentorship just means it's someone that's done something that you want to do better and they got a little bit more experience than you. I've never, ever thought that someone was older was better than me. But what I did respect is that they've lived a little bit longer than me, but I also saw and I did my due diligence on what they had done. Because what we got to realize, Akil, is I don't care what you say you are, what have you done? Tell me what you've done, right? I know that you've been on the mat. I know that you've had a diet to cut weight. And these are just things that I know without even asking you. So I know your discipline is there. Athletes have that, but a lot of times they don't know how to channel that into asking questions and being vulnerable around people that know more than them. And a lot of times when you're relevant, if I was still playing football and I was in the NFL right now and I had a social media, I would be killing it, because I literally would be posting the things and building relationships that I didn't build when I was 22 or 23, because I wasn't smart enough to know that the very people that want to be around me could be helping me. I had to wait to get to New York and be like, oh, wow, this NFL shit don't work anymore. And this little cute face doesn't work anymore. I got to go out and really figure out what I got to do to build relationships and get people's respect. And so I tell every young athlete, young person, old person, it's never too late to find your faith in what you love. And a lot of times your faith is like a GPS. Sometimes it will take you to places that you didn't even know that you were going to go because you got lost. So believe in your faith, because a lot of times it can take you to better places than you even thought you were going. It's never about the destination, it's about the journey. My journey is meeting you. My journey is being on this podcast. And my journey is also the time that I give people. This is my day off. So this is how much I love you. Vice versa. I never think it's about me. You're giving me your time, because there's two ways you're going to pay people: your time and your credit card. That's just it. That's the only way it works. Your time is money. Your time is your family. Your time is your faith. It's my 5 cylinders, right? Faith, work, community, and family. Yeah. And those things are all important to me.
So I think, man, that was actually really powerful. And I almost had a teardrop moment. That's why I was like, he gives me his time. But, I respect it, for you and my friend Sam Marciano, who, like, everyone's like, well, how did you get to work with the NFL and the NBA? I'm like, well, my friends. Mm-hmm. Like, I asked my friends. Like, that's what I did. I asked my friends, like, hey, here's a concept, here's an idea. I remember I tried, during the pandemic, we were trying to put together a bid for something. It didn't go through, it didn't work out. But it wasn't like, you suck, Akil. It's like, hey, we'll get them on the next one. We'll find something else to, collaborate on. And I always felt like you get it. You get that there's going to be wins and there's going to be learning moments, not losses. It's like, nah, that's a learning moment, man. We didn't get it this time, Just when you're out there, you're always got that learning moment. So talk about that business learning moment and how you transition into it and how you understand. And again, especially for men of color or people of color, like we're just like, oh man, I took the L. Like I don't have credit, I don't have funders. Like, okay, but why are you wallowing?
Yeah. I think the first thing that we have to stop doing as a community, and I speak of men of color, is thinking that someone's going to give us something. It won't happen. And if that's your mentality, you've already lost the game. If you really are going to be an entrepreneur or even an entrepreneur, if you're going to work inside of a company, that is not how it works. And we know as people that played on teams that there's moving cylinders for us to be successful, right? Wrestling's a little bit different because you're out there on your own. But as a football player, I don't care if I was Bo Jackson in the backfield. If I had no offensive lineman, I ain't going nowhere, right? So I've always come up with the mentality that, if I don't have people that I can lean on and help me, and I need to find people that are smarter than me, that know more than me, it's the only way I'm going to have more. So for me, that transition was tough because I didn't come from a pedigree of Ivy League, finance. I didn't work on Wall Street. All these things didn't come to me. I had to go get them. And there's no handbook on, black man tries to figure out how to work in white corporate America, right? If there is a book like that, it could be a bestseller. But the mentality, you are your thoughts. And I knew that I couldn't feel sorry for myself. And that's where I always love about you when we talk politics. If you're a Democrat or Republican, at the end of the day, it's about what are you getting done for the people, right? And how do you impact folks? So, I wrote this down because I think it's something that sometimes I have so many thoughts and I don't get those sound bites out, but I wanted to give this one to you because I wrote it down specifically for this moment. I go, if you feel the need to always be right, you will always typically have a difficult time acknowledging that you are the problem. And I just knew that I wasn't always right, but I wanted perspective. I wanted to ask people that I thought knew more than me why they thought the way that they thought. And honestly, a lot of my purpose is to get people to think. I might activate you on some shit you might get mad at me, but I got you to think. And that's all that matters to me. So that transition for me was every time I went into a business meeting, I would see people go back and forth. And I would say to myself in an arrogant way, like, this is some dumb shit. Like, I know the answer, but I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm like, we had an hour meeting and I always knew, like, what are you guys talking about? Like, it's right here. So as I started to build my confidence and have credibility, I started to speak up. But I knew when I spoke up, and we know this, if we speak up and that shit's fucked up, you don't ever get another shot. Yeah. So I knew that I had to really have a very good answer and bring perspective to the entire room. And I think that's really one of my gifts is seeing and understanding people. I understand Republicans. I understand the poor guy. I understand the rich guy. I understand everybody's perspective. And if you can get that to a point where you understand that life's about trade-offs, it's always going to be about trade-offs. Yeah. It's never, as much as we want it to be fair, I know for a fact that I am an African-American man in America. And I walk into rooms that usually I'm the only Black guy. And you've been there too, Akil, because I've been in rooms with you. And I never used that as a reason for me not to be successful. I knew when I opened my mouth, I was going to have to say something that was smart. I was going to have to say something that made sense. I was going to have to have proper English. I was going to have to say all the things that I needed to say to impact the way that people looked at me. And I literally worked on that every single day. It's like a skill set. Yeah. I worked on how I spoke. I worked on the things I thought about. And then literally, once I got on TV and I started to see myself, I would cringe. I'm like, oh my God, I sound stupid. Or that word didn't sound right. Or I used the wrong English. Something went wrong. And I started to critique myself. And I tell people this all the time. As a young boy, I remember the fear of the teacher asking me to read out loud. And not that I was stupid, but I didn't like to read out loud. So my dad was like, start reading the paper out loud to yourself in your room. So I'd literally go in my room, lay on the bed, and I'd read the paper out loud. And it helped me speak better. And I always tell people this, I don't care how much access you have, how much power you have and how much money you have. When you're dealing with media and you open your mouth, you can lose it all.
Oh, yes. And you know what? The weird part is everyone asked me, they said, how did you get so polished and you're so good at this? I go, man, do you know it's like when you're 17 years old and you got a microphone in your face for the first time and they're asking you about the game and you have to try to make sure that you don't, number one, sound arrogant, number two, sound cocky, number three, slander your team, number four, talk about something that you weren't supposed to be talking about because it's insider information. There's so much that you're learning as an athlete in terms of media and that's why you only see select players go on television. Most folks don't realize that. Like they're like, no, there are probably guys on the team that might be phenomenal athletes, but if you put them in front of the camera, the coach cringes. Like, oh, we don't know what they're gonna say. So what you end up with is somebody that's more polished, and so that person sometimes becomes the darling child. Like that's our media darling. And I was there. I became the media darling. They had me writing articles, doing interviews, and I wasn't even that good. Well, I wasn't as good as I wanted to be. Let's say that much. We've got to give ourselves some grace for we were pretty good. I mean, Division I athletes. You're in the league. I got to work out. But at the end of the day, it was about us being able to. Hey, you've got to be relatable. You've got to speak to the camera. Use your proper diction. And you get dragged for that, but then all your homies after you graduate, they're calling you because they can't get jobs.
Can't get jobs. Well, I see it. I'd like to comment on that. I mean, I'm a victim of this as you are. Social media existed for 12 years. Instagram came out literally in 2012, and as much as it's helped a lot of our community, it's also hurt a lot of our community. Because one thing that I know is numbers. I know that only 9% of America makes over 150K, right? It's fact. You can look it up. You can Google it. I deal with people every single day that make a lot of money. Top 30%, top 5%, $100 million guys, $200 million guys. And I deal with guys that make $300,000 a year. But the ideal that only 9% of our country makes over 150K, and you see these people that are living out their dreams based around a facade, things that they really don't have. Because no one's gonna I took a shower and I put gel on my hair for this interview. If you would have saw me 30 minutes ago, I might have looked busted. My point is, no one's gonna show you their worst, right? It's not an impactful thing to go and be like, oh yeah, I feel like shit today. Let me post a picture of me looking busted. Now, why I bring this up is we're killing and hurting the very generation behind us, right? Right now, the biggest homeless person in our country is the Black African-American woman that have children, right? It's a fact. It's up 48% since the pandemic. We're creating these dialogues of the word boss bitch and the way that we look at ourselves. We're missing out on teaching our kids what it is to be a good wife, a good husband, whatever that might be, and whatever gender you are, right? We're stopped developing people skills. If you looked at the family in the 1960s, it was a mom, a dad, two kids taking a family portrait. Now you got the kids, 3 kids with 3 different baby daddies filming their mama twerking. And I cringe because we're the joke, and I don't like that. It bothers me. And I want us to be, I feel like if you say anything that doesn't line up with the culture, you gotta remember too, you know how dark-skinned Black dudes be like, quit acting light-skinned.
Oh yeah. Well, but that's our colorism. You be like, don't stop, because I get to say it to my lighter-skinned friends. Because I'm light-skinned.
My comeback's always been, which light-skinned are you talking about? Ali, Malcolm X, Joe Lewis, or Barack? Last time I checked, they all were winners, and they all fight. They could all speak, and they could all had something to say. And I think the biracial kid, he was the president for 8 years. So which light-skinned dude are you talking about? Don't get the pretty shit twisted. I used to knock people out for a living. And I think when you start to think about the Malcolm X's, the Joe Lewis's, We need to stop that and start to think about what's important. And going back to what you said, business, what your checking account looks like. I've been in a situation the last 5 years where I've been struggling as an entrepreneur per se of what I look like in 2015. Me going through a bad time in my life and making a lot of money. So we have to adjust the way that we think, because at the end of the day, we're hurting ourselves as a community. And it doesn't look like it because there's so many athletes do well, entertainers do well. And we mimic that and we put that on our social, but I know what you make. I know what you make. People aren't making that kind of money.
Mm. Well, my goal in life is to be like you, Sean. I remember there was an event. Shout out to my friend who one of our buddies ran a program over at the Carnegie Hall, and we're featured in that thing. And I was like, "Yo, two black dudes are featured on like this pamphlet that's like going out to what it's called the Notable Society, where billionaire heiresses."
These New York socialites.
Yeah, like socialites. Like I have never been in that kind of situation, and to this day, I'm like, yo, that was a cool moment. It's low key cool moment.
Totally.
And those sort of things just didn't happen to me. But I remember you saying, yo, man, just have fun. I remember you nudged me and say, just have fun. And I was like, okay. Because I felt out of place. Yeah. But when you said just have fun, I was like, okay. Like, it was like that permission to like, yo, Akil, you just entered a space that you're not used to with a bunch of people who are, New York socialites with big money, but just have fun. Be yourself is what I heard, and they'll love you.
They're going to love you because I love you. And if I love you and I've seen you do things in rooms, everyone's going to love you because you have something to say. You're this big personality and you're a teddy bear and and the beauty of that is we literally were in Carnegie Hall on 57th Street and 7th Avenue, one of the most iconic buildings in the world. And the camera came around and you literally saw the money in the room. And it is low key. And that's what people get. People that have big money, the 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, $500 million people, they're all low key. They don't care about any of that BS that we see on TV. And that moment, I kind of looked at you. And it's the first time I ever saw you uncomfortable. And I said, Akil, you got this, man. Just be you. Because I had a little bit more experience than you because I've been doing it a little bit longer. Yeah. And that's really what it's all about. Put yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable and do it again. Get those reps in, right? And the more that you get those reps in, the more you're going to be able to handle situations, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about poise. It's about feeling comfortable and being uncomfortable and knowing that you're going to rise to the occasion. And you have talent, right? Always set the table with talent. And then after talent, it's culture. Once I get the culture of the team, and then it's strategy. So for me, you have all those things. It was just a matter of you being tested.
Well, hopefully I passed that test. But Sean, listen, we're getting towards the end because I definitely want to make sure that I respect your time because I value your time. So before I ask my final question, what is it that your companies are building? Because, one of the things you said is, identify the problem, build the solution. What solutions are you building?
So my company is called BQuest Management. We are a financial management company. And what does that mean? I work with individuals. A lot of them are transitioning from professional sports into entrepreneurs. They might own a Chick-fil-A. They might own their own business. And I set them up for success. What happens is a lot of people don't want to do the work and they start out with the bad people without the right intentions. And then they have to come to me after they've already messed up. So I set things up where the biggest thing for me is insurance and wealth, right? How do you protect the money that you already have? How do you sustain that? How do you create wealth without working, right? Because as individuals, we only have so much time in a day. So I can't be everywhere. And I teach people how to grow that wealth, right? It's kind of like, I use the word fertility, right? You take a female pig and a female pig, you can't make babies. But if you take a female pig and a male pig and you create a baby, you're gonna have piglets. That's how the dollar works. You got to figure out what that fertility is in everything that you do. How do I create an asset that might have been a liability, right? A home is not an asset anymore. If you're paying on it, it's a liability, right? Until you own it and it makes you money, it becomes an asset. So I started to look at every angle, from the stock market to investments to social impact investing to everything that I possibly knew through the 20 years of me being in New York and working in finance, on how could I create a company that can literally help people and plug and play, and I get paid off of it. I realized that after 10 years, I'd created so many relationships, and we have talked about this off the record, of connecting people and not getting paid for the connection. And they went off and made $100 million or $10 million or $500,000. Like, oh, wow, you guys made a company? And they even forget that you gave them the contact. So I was like, listen, once I build my company, and think about the word BQuest, it means, what are you going to leave behind? You Google BQuest, it means, what are you going to give behind? What are you going to give, and how are you going to give it before you die? So that word means something to me. Legacy means something to me. And so I tied everything that I knew in business, and I created a company around it, and I created 4 arms of that business, one of them being crypto. If you guys, we can talk after this. We created an insurance wrap that literally you can put money in this wrapper. And we did it for hedge fund guys maybe 15 years ago. And because crypto, so many people were making so much money, but they were also getting taxed when they pulled out of it, when they pulled the money out, and they didn't care. But look what happened, right? It dropped, but it's going to come back. Yeah. So we create product. I work with a company called the Hotel Group. They're kind of the motherboard, and I sit inside of there, and they're a big insurance company. And I realized that the insurance that we're talking about versus State Farm and the stuff that you see on TV, it's a different beast, right? Life insurance is one of the greatest assets that you can have. And we need to start thinking about 90% of people that live under poverty go into bankruptcy based off burying a parent. Little things like this, what we don't think about because we're scared to talk about uncomfortable things. Wealthy people talk about this with their kids at the age of 5. They put policies on their kids. They have trust funds on their kids. And it's not something that's uncomfortable. So think about it. Rich people are talking about shit that we're not talking about because they want to create legacy, and they know that money will move things forward, right? And when people talk about, oh, money doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It does matter. Anyone out there, please, if you want to have an argument with me about what money does, I will have Akil set it up, and I will debate with you on what money can do. Right? The passion behind the money and what you plan on doing with it is the most valuable thing. But I think my legacy will be based around me being brave. And to your point, that uncomfortable feeling that you have, me being okay with introducing myself to the world. And it takes practice to go up to someone that maybe you're scared of and just say, hey, my name is, Sean James, and I'd like to meet you. I've heard so much about you, and I just wanted to have this moment to share a moment with you and see what happens. It's all you can do in life, right? I mean, like I said, you're going to pay people 2 ways, your credit card or your time. And if you have the ability to be in rooms with people that you want to be like, study their behavior, study their habits. And more importantly, those habits tie into financial literacy, financial wealth, health wealth, mental wealth. All these things add up to how we're going to move forward. And I think we're dealing with a lot of post-pandemic stress. I think a lot of people are dealing with diabetes, of the sugar that was eaten, the alcohol that was consumed, and the mental illness that we're dealing with. That's why you see robberies are up, crimes up.
Yeah, homicides are up. I saw a guy in New York, he lost his foot. Yeah. He was like walking. I was like, how do you lose your foot?
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
Question, but I think for me, it's really about, building wealth, having an understanding of mental illness and an understanding that I'm someone that deals with depression and I manage it. I think it's important that we look at those things and don't make fun of those things. And honestly, really going out there and experiencing everything that you possibly can. And believe me, it's okay that you don't get it right. Just don't stop. Continue to move forward, right? And that's what we do as athletes, Akil. We know that we got to go on to the next. We can't sit there and feel sorry for ourselves. And all I'm saying to everyone out there, never feel sorry for yourself. And it's okay that you lost, right? It's okay that you lost because you're going to win if you continue to move forward.
Well, Sean, I want to say thank you so very, very much for joining me here on the Big 3 Me podcast, powered by G Media. As a friend, as a colleague, as a mentor, as a brother, I respect you immensely. I love you to death. I'm saying I love you to life. That's what I said. Gotta get that negative stuff. I love you to life, my friend. And for everyone at home, you have a great day and an even better tomorrow.